Right now, we head up to Ruston. Matt Belinson is the sports editor there at the Ruston Leader. Covers the Louisiana Tech Bulldogs. Good enough to jump aboard with us here for a couple of minutes. Matt, how are you, man?
I'm doing pretty good. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, it's our pleasure. Obviously, a really tall task this week coming to Baton Rouge. What's the general mood vibe there in Ruston this week?
You know, I think fans are encouraged by what they saw. I think from the defense last week for Louisiana Tech, I think that's pretty much the only thing that they were encouraged by in that week one win over Southeastern Louisiana. You know, the offense had a lot of turnover, you know, bringing in Tony Franklin as the new offensive coordinator, a lot of new changes, new quarterback, a couple new pieces at wide receiver. I think fans were excited, frankly, to see if this offense could put up some points finally in year 4 of the Sonny Cumbie era. Unfortunately, that did not happen until really pretty much late in the third quarter where this offense finally put together 2 touchdown drives. Outside of that, it was pretty much more of the same. You know, the offense stalled out, a lot of 3-and-outs. You know, they basically didn't play a half of football against Southeastern. So I think they head down to Baton Rouge, you know, fans and coaches and players alike. I think they're optimistic that things offensively can be better. I don't know if they're going to necessarily put up a lot of points this week against LSU, but I certainly feel like fans are encouraged that there's some pieces in place that I think lends you to believe that Louisiana Tech can have some better success this year.
Tony Franklin's a name that a lot of SEC fans will recognize, but of course, I mean, Sonny Cumbie, his background is on the offensive side of the ball. Whose fingerprint really is on this offense in Ruston?
It's Tony Franklin. Tony Franklin is calling the plays. He's the primary play caller. They made it very clear in the offseason program that he is in charge of this offense, personnel, scheme, you know, whatever you want to say. Sonny Cumbie is pretty much taking a step back. You know, he's going to be the overseer now, offense and defense. He's kind of the culture builder, building relationships, just making sure the operation of the football program goes smoothly. You know, you even heard it last week. You know, Tony Franklin started the first half up in the box calling plays, and then Tony himself told Sonny Cumbie, hey, I'm going to come down on the field in the second half and call plays. Does that sound good to you? And Sonny said yes. So this is 100% Tony's offense. I think that, again, was maybe the kind of the frustrating part with Tech fans is, you know, okay, fine. Sonny Cumbie gives up play calling to Tony Franklin in year 4. Finally, we'll get to see some offense going. Tony Franklin knows what FBS play calling looks like. And for pretty much a half of football, they did not look like a competent offense. So I think moving forward, now that they know who their quarterback is, now that they know what this offense can do, I'm expecting them to put up some points here in the next couple of weeks and really, you know, put their mark that this is a different offense from what we've seen.
Yeah, Matt, it was interesting on Saturday against Southeastern. There was balance. But there just wasn't a lot of offense. It was 130 pass yards, 132 rushing yards. So do they want balance, or are they maybe trying to lean more one side or the other?
This is definitely a run-first team. You know, Tony Franklin's offense is dictated by a run-first quarterback. You know, he wants a mobile guy back there, you know, behind the center. I think that's why they gave Trey Kukuk the job at quarterback. You know, if you remember last year, you know, Evan Bullock, you know, was this team's starting quarterback for 10 games. And Evan was in deep competition with Trey, you know, throughout fall camp. But it was very obvious that just Evan's lack of mobility, you know, held him back as far as what Tony Franklin wanted to do in this offense. And they made it very clear that Trey can do that. You know, coming from Saddleback Community College in California, you know, Trey rushed for almost 600 yards, 6 touchdowns. The idea of a running quarterback is huge in this offense, and I think, like you mentioned, you saw multiple running backs, you know, get in that game, and I think a lot of balanced carries. I don't think they've really established a downhill. You're going to get 10 to 12 carries as our tailback type of guy. I think it's going to be a little bit more balanced. But I think overall in the passing game, I think it's definitely going to build off the run, what they can do from that. I think they don't really have those downfield playmakers, those explosive guys that they've had maybe in years past, like a Trey Harris or a Cyrus Allen. But I certainly feel like they have a pretty good tight end, Eli Finley. They have a couple of junior college transfers that they like as well in the receiver room. So I would expect on Saturday this team is going to run first, and then maybe take a couple shots in the passing game.
Matt, it's always interesting how rosters are built now in the portal era. Matt Belinson's with us, by the way, from the Ruston Daily Leader. You mentioned Trey Harris, who, of course, everybody remembers was just outstanding last year at Ole Miss when he was healthy. I mean, he was at Tech before he went to Ole Miss. You mentioned a few JUCO transfers coming in. Has Sonny Cumbie built this roster through the transfer portal?
You know, it's interesting. I think in certain spots they have. I think particularly on the defensive line and in the defensive secondary, you've definitely seen them increase, you know, their JUCO, their transfer portal additions. I think, frankly, some of that has just been the roster has just turned over at a super high rate that I think they don't really have the luxury of trusting. You know, maybe some of the high school kids that they've brought in through the recruiting, cycle over the past couple of years. I think that's why they've gone through the JUCO route the past couple of years, particularly on the defensive, offensive lines and the defensive secondary. I think those are positions that are too crucial to maybe sometimes trust some of the high school kids that you bring in. But at the same time, I think if you're a Louisiana Tech program and wondering maybe why you have not sustained success and had a winning season since 2019, it's probably because you have not had talent in your building that has stayed and frankly produced to the point where you trust them to be in your building year after year. So I certainly feel like on the offensive and defensive line, it's definitely where you've seen a lot of junior college transfers, a lot of guys coming in and out throughout the past couple seasons, particularly on the defensive line. I mean, there's a lot of new faces this year. If I remember correctly, they lost 7 to the transfer portal this past offseason alone. So there's a lot of new faces from the junior college, similar mid-major level. So the defensive line is definitely where they've hit, transfer portal pretty heavy. Outside of that, at the skill positions, they've brought in a couple of JUCO transfers, but for the most part, they really have brought in some guys that have stayed in this program for a long time and have given them some opportunities.
One guy not on the line, but that LSU fans will remember, is Kolobby Fields from New Orleans, started his career at South Carolina, was in Baton Rouge for a year, transferred to Tech. He's the preseason CUSA Defensive Player of the Year. Had 13 tackles last week against Southeastern. What has worked so well for Fields there in Ruston?
Yeah, I think it's just the versatility of the defensive schemes he's been in. He's not necessarily, the typical linebacker build, 6 foot, 225. He definitely is a guy that can be in a kind of a hybrid role. They'd like to put him, inside the box, outside the box. They can put him in the coverage, in the secondary. He's definitely a guy that I think you can put him all across the field in different areas. And I think he can just confuse defenses with his athleticism. Again, like you mentioned, he can go down and make 13 tackles. He can also break up passes and make plays on the ball. So he's just a linebacker that I think can do a lot of different things in this defensive scheme with Luke Olson. And I think you saw that obviously in week 1. Again, he was deployed very effectively. And frankly, last year, I was kind of surprised that he came back to Louisiana Tech just given the production that he had last year, with over 70 tackles, a couple tackles for loss, a pick. He definitely improved his game. Obviously he had to sit out 2 seasons ago after transferring from LSU, but man, he made the most of his redshirt junior season last year, and I would expect him to continue that production definitely this Saturday and going forward at Louisiana Tech.
How are the Bulldogs on special teams this year?
They had to replace their place kicker and their punter. Both of those guys left for the transfer portal as well. So it's just the nature of the beast at Louisiana Tech. They just have to replace a lot of positions, frankly, year after year. I thought their place kicker did okay. In game 1, again, the offense did not exactly produce a whole lot for him to necessarily show off his field goal leg. And I think, kind of the kickoffs were definitely a question mark as well. Buck Buchanan has been this team's place kicker for the past couple seasons, had a really great leg. I think he was top 5 in the country in touchbacks. He's gone out to Colorado, so I think you're going to see a lot of kickoffs this year not reach the end zone. Louisiana Tech special teams coverage game is definitely going to have to be a lot stronger. I think in the punting game as well, John Hoyt Chance, was the Conference USA Special Teams Player of the Week this past week, but at the same time, Sonny Cumbie admitted that the hang time on some of these punts is a concern. So I think overall there's some encouraging signs that you maybe have some pieces that you like in the special teams game, but it is definitely an unproven unit just in terms of game speed and game time played. So I would definitely expect the special teams unit to grow and frankly maybe have some growing pains, if not this weekend, then definitely throughout the rest of the season.
Matt, if Matt Belinson from the Ruston Leader is with us, if this is a tall ask this weekend, LSU's I think a 37.5 point favorite. If there is a blueprint for Sonny Cumbie squad to come to Baton Rouge, keep it close, make it a game in the fourth quarter, how does that look?
It has to be takeaways. I go back to when Louisiana Tech played at Arkansas last year. Again, I know the final scores that says that Louisiana Tech lost by 21 points. But I go back to Arkansas's first 5 drives: punt, interception, punt, fumble. Louisiana Tech offense does nothing after their defense gets those stops. And so I think it's a matter of, can you potentially stop this LSU juggernaut offense? Can you somehow get Garrett Nussmeier to make a mistake? Can you find a way to intercept the ball and return it a couple yards and get inside LSU territory? And you have to take advantage of opportunities. Again, it was encouraging to see this defense have 3 takeaways last week, but at the same time, you only score 7 points after 3 takeaways. So if Louisiana Tech wants any opportunity to beat LSU, for one, they have to force them into turnovers. And then number 2, they have to take advantage of the opportunities that the defense gives them. I think that's frankly the only way. I think if these teams just match up and go blow for blow, I don't see how this Louisiana Tech offense can possibly match LSU. I think it definitely is going to have to be LSU's offense gives Louisiana Tech extra possessions, and then Louisiana Tech has to take advantage of those opportunities.
Are they a bowl team?
Man, I predicted them to go, bowling, in the preseason, just given how easy their first 6 games are. But I'll be honest, the offensive performance in week 1 definitely scared me. Again, it's only one game, but I'm not going to make grand conclusions. I certainly feel like the rest of the schedule bodes them well, that they can make a bowl game. But this offense would have to show major improvement, for them to do that. But as of right now, I'm going to stick with my prediction. I did have them going 7-5 in the regular season. I think just the schedule bodes so well. You get the 3 best teams in the league coming to your home field, and then your first 3 league games are New Mexico State, UTEP, and Kennesaw State. Like, you should be 3-0 in league play entering the middle of October. So I think Louisiana Tech definitely has a path to a bowl game.
Matt Belinson, Ruston Leader, covers the Bulldogs. We appreciate it, man. Thanks for the time.
Yeah, thank you.
Of course, it's our pleasure. Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact, and be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.